everybody, this is Karen at Moonflower Studio Creative, and today we're going to paint this lovely swan. I found the reference image on pixabay.com and I thought it was quite beautiful. I love to paint nature paintings and animals, and in this illustration we're going to learn how to do negative space and reflections in water, and also we'll be painting a beautiful animal. So I just want to apologize for the focus on my camera, but I still thought it was good enough for you to see the process. I got to change that setting and I'm learning as I go, so please bear with me. So I mixed three colors. I mixed a lighter brown with my yellow ochre, maybe a little burnt umber, and I mixed a warmer blue color, and I also mixed a black out of like a purple, an ultramarine blue, and also the black that was on my palette, which is probably a Mars black. So I'm also right here painting in the shadow portion of the swan. So I'm dabbing in some water and I'm adding some of my lighter blue because that's the shadow side, would be reflecting the water back onto the swan. So it's on the blue side. And then when we get into where the light is hitting the swan, it would be more the color of the swan itself, which would probably have a lot more warm colors and browns in it. So I'm kind of going right for the darkest shadows here, just because it helps me to figure out the other values, because this painting is mostly very dark values, and you have the white swan. So I want to kind of get my darks down, and then we'll figure out our midtones from there. So I'm not making this area too wet, but you can see I added some darker, more pigment around the neck area, and I put more water as it goes out into the feathers. And so then I decided I'm going to add some warm to the other side of it and sort of let those colors blend together. And then it's going to dry just a little bit. It's always drying as you're working in watercolors, and I'm just going to dab in some of that brown into the shadow of the neck area. And then I'm going to grab my tan color after I'm done with my shadow, and I'm going to start painting the feathers in the neck area. So I painted the head very like a wash, and then as I'm going around the curve of the neck, I'm putting a light wash of light feather suggestions going in the direction of as how they would grow. So we're just going to keep adding to these. So in watercolor, you paint from light to dark, and in watercolor, you're painting the light. You're literally always painting the light. So I'm going to add a little blue here and there to the feathers, bring in a little warmth, and on the shadow side adding those blue feathers. And here I go adding more shadow feathers. I just do it a little bit at a time and gradually build up, and try to keep it from creating blooms. And there you go. So now I'm going to wet underneath my swan. I'm going to make sure he's completely dry, and I'm just going to wet this whole area where I'm going to add the reflection of the swan. So I don't have to be that careful because literally we're going to paint black all the way around this, but we do want to work wet on wet. So I'm just following my my picture that I'm using as a reference, and I'm dabbing in blue, and I'm dabbing in my light blue and my brown colors, and wherever there's going to be a shadow, I'm going to reflect the same thing down on the water area. I'm working very fast here, and I'm using a very, pretty saturated brush because I want it to be dark, and we know that when we paint in watercolors, it is always lighter drying than it is when you put it down. So I did mix a lot of blue black there, but unfortunately I did not mix enough. So my paper is 140-pound cold press, and it is just sopping in that color really quickly into the paper. So I'm running out of this blue, but I can create this blue again. So I am just carefully going all around my swan, and then I'm drawing in some waves, and they're kind of like calm water waves. So closer to the swan, the lines will be closer together, and as it comes closer to you on the bottom of the paper, the line should be further apart. So I'm just going to make decisions and keep adding more color because I really want it very dark under the swan. And as long as you keep it wet, you shouldn't have any, just lines that are harsh. There's a few harsh lines there on the left, and I'm going to go try to fix them up with a little water. And there you go. When I start a painting, I never think about making mistakes. I always think, even if it doesn't work out the way I think it might, because watercolors can be very unpredictable, I just go with the flow. As watercolor flow, so just go with the flow. Here I am mixing more of my color. So one of my problems with this illustration was I ran out of my dark color, so I'm mixing it again, and you can see how I do that. I'm getting it as dark and as saturated as I could possibly get it, and it should just flow right into that other blue area. And I turned my canvas around because it's easier for me to just twist my canvas block around instead of, trying to paint on the other side of it, of the swan, and possibly, smudging it or something like that. It's easier for your hand too. So always do what's easier for yourself. So here I am literally drawing lines around the swan's feathers, and I'm just kind of making it look feathery and sort of sketchy. And I'm going to go back and fill it in with the watercolor solid black color, and you're not going to see that line anymore. Wow, that really makes the swan really stand out beautifully, and the color, the bluish black, is really beautiful, because if we just used black right out of the tube, it would have looked really flat and not so dynamic, I guess. It would just not have looked so pretty. And of course I ran out of my dark color again, so I want some more darks in the background, and I'm going to add more details. So as this is still wet, I'm just going to add more. And if it were a little bit dry, it would start getting a lot of blooms, but it's really wet enough that I can add more of the darks because I really want it super dark back there. And every layer will make it darker and darker. All right, it's really coming along. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue to the water just below the swan, and then we're going to go back when the background is dry and add all of our details into the swan's feathers. So I'm going to go to the edge of the feather line, and I'm going to put my darkest color in, and this is going to be in the browns, and I'm going to make it transition up towards the front of the bird because the feathers are kind of round because the bird is round, so you want to kind of feather it in with water. So put your darks at the edges, and then you're going to add water to kind of feather it. Feather the feathers, if you will. So you want to just blend it really nicely. And I think right there, I was making a little bit of a mistake. I looked at it and I thought it was a different feather line, so I'm just trying to repair what I did. I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm just going to keep moving forward. So it's still a little wet, and I'm just dabbing some darks at the edge of that feather line, and I am using the tip of my brush to make some textures of feathers, the little individual feathers, coming around. So I keep looking at my reference and I keep making decisions on where I want to put a shadow and what color it's going to be and what value it's going to be. So we want to make the underside of the bird look pretty dark, and we also want the top of the bird to be very light. And we're just going to keep building up our layers and building up our values and working on those feathers the same way we did the first one. You have all your line work there, hopefully, and you can just keep looking at your reference and really observe where those darks are. Right there, I missed a little bit of my sky, and I thought it was probably a feather when I had it upside down, so I'm just filling in that little dark area. So I keep deepening my shadows and trying to define my feather shadows and adding just a little bit of line work here and there, not to overwhelm, but the more shapes you have and a few lines, then it just suggests the feathers. You don't have to paint every single feather. My feathers are drying. I'm going to go back into the water and make a few adjustments with some more color reflections. And I'm also going to add white. I'm going to get out my white gouache and I'm going to go all around the back of the bird and just make some tiny lines with my number 6 round that's got a really pointy point, and just create some light feather lines going into the black to make it look more natural. And we're going to do that also around his neck area. And then I'm going to add some white to the water, just here and there, just to add to that reflection. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video and how to make a beautiful swan, but we also learned how to paint around an object and work with reflections in the water and paint some feathers. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please subscribe and hit that notification button so I can create more videos for you. Until then, stay well, and I'll see you in the next video.